Welcome to episode 345 of the Postal Hub podcast. I'm Ian Kerr. Food delivery. It's just like parcel delivery, but different, right? Anyway, restaurant delivery expert Peter Backman, the brains behind The Delivery World and The Delivery Profits, joins me in a moment to discuss some of the differences and similarities between food delivery and parcel delivery. And we'll go off on some tangents too. So coming up in just a moment, Peter Backman. Joining me on the line is Peter Backman. Peter is, well, how should we describe you, Peter? A restaurant delivery expert, a man with decades of experience in restaurants and food services. I dare say would probably take up half the podcast reading out your CV, Peter. So
yeah, that'll do. That'll do fine.
We'll leave it at that. We're going to talk about things relating to food delivery, restaurant delivery, and some of the similarities or lessons that we can learn from what's happening in food that might apply to those in the non-food sector, and especially as we're seeing increasing crossover, shall we say, between the two worlds. We see restaurant delivery companies wanting to deliver parcels, and we see postal delivery operators, you know what I mean, everybody, postal and parcel delivery operators thinking about delivering food. Peter, what do we...
Well, first of all, just a point of clarification. From my perspective, we're talking about restaurant delivery rather than general grocery food delivery because it's to do with time. Yeah. Restaurant delivery is certainly required within an hour and usually within 20 minutes to half an hour, whereas a food delivery may be 24 or 48 hours. So we're talking about short-term delivery.
Yeah, so we'll focus on restaurant delivery. Although while we're on that, and I'm already going off on a tangent, we're only a minute and a half here. There's some talk about how Amazon is changing perspectives even in supermarket delivery, if we want to call it supermarket delivery. That the expectations of perhaps next day or same week are being upended by Amazon's ability to deliver quickly. Anyway, let's not go down that rabbit hole, Peter. Otherwise, we'll not go down the right.
Well, we can do it later. We can do it on another podcast.
Yeah, or we'll just stop recording and just say whatever we want with nobody listening. Now, let's talk about restaurant delivery. The restaurant delivery is not a new thing, Peter, is it? I mean, we think about Deliveroo or Menulog or all the other many companies, some of which no longer exist, but that's not the beginning of restaurant or hot food delivery, is it?
No, I mean, restaurant delivery has been going on, in my perception, in the UK for 50 years. Chinese and Indian restaurants, when they popped up in the 1950s and 1960s, they started doing delivery. Certainly, if you go to the United States, it's been going on for much longer. Restaurants there have it in their DNA that they do delivery, and it's been going on for, I dare say, 100 years. So no, it's not new.
And so whilst it's not new, but the sort of the newness, I suppose, these days seems to be around the technology. So you're no longer ringing up your local Indian restaurant or ringing up your local pizzeria or even ringing their, Australians might remember that there was a 13-166 or whatever it was, Pizza Hut delivery. Anyway, nobody's listening to this to hear me sing Pizza Hut's old jingles, Peter, but these days it seems to be the technology is what's driving it all forward.
Well, yes, it's technology, but it's also the delivery aggregators, the DoorDashes, the Just Eats, the Uber Eats, and so on. Those companies have changed the atmosphere, the environment, and the capability of delivering restaurant meals quickly. Whether it's the technology which has driven those companies or those companies have driven the technology, I wouldn't like to be specific because I think the two have interacted. But without the technology, we wouldn't have current restaurant delivery models working today. Absolutely right.
So would you characterize restaurant delivery as being really a one-to-one delivery model, pickup and delivery, as opposed to, say, a parcel delivery route where you've got a van filled with parcels?
Yeah, I think that is probably a defining characteristic. Another defining characteristic, though, is the timeliness. Because as I said before, restaurant meals got to be delivered within 20 minutes, half an hour, whereas something in the post can be delivered over days or, I guess, even weeks.
So how is restaurant delivery coping with this? Because when you look at the news surrounding these sorts of, the likes of Deliveroo and all of that, there'll always be news on certain news outlets that was around customers complaining about getting food delivered cold, or their meal being delivered all mixed up, or the classic at the moment is the DoorDash or Instacart delivery driver that gets pulled over for speeding by the police in the US, and then the police officer ends up completing the delivery. Well, I'm not sure that's really a great business model, getting the police to finish your deliveries.
Well, you started off this little bit of a conversation by talking about the technology, and I agreed with you. But the other element is another element is the last mile delivery. So you can split up delivery into a number of components. One is capturing the order, which is a technological issue by and large, although you can capture it by somebody just walking in and placing an order or phoning up. That's the old model. So that's one part of it. But the other part is, once the meal has been cooked, getting it to the customer. So there are two distinct elements, and what the aggregators have done is bring those together, melded them with some additional technology, which is communicating with the restaurant, communicating between the rider or the potential rider and the delivery company, and communicating with the customer. So there's a load of technology between the order capture bit and the final mile bit. And it seems to me that a core issue is the technological things that I've described. It can be highly profitable, because once you've made your investment in the technology and captured your customers, then the money rolls in. I'm simplifying it. Last mile addresses your one-to-one issue. It's got to be done every single time. So scalability is difficult. And then coupled with the fact that last mile delivery is inherently unprofitable. You've got to get a guy on a bike or in a car. It's raining. It's got to go uphill. You don't know where, you can't find the customer's address, and so on and so on. It's a very expensive business to do at very low cost. So those, I think, are important characteristics of restaurant delivery. Don't apply necessarily to postal delivery, for example.
It's certainly something that is a key difference, is that also the planning ability. And the planability, is that even a word? Let's just say it is, everybody. Before we hit record, we had a discussion about words and cliches that we can't stand.
Let's go with planability. I'm comfortable with that.
I read a terrible thing just on this, everybody. Somebody described it, going into detail, they described it as double clicking on an issue. Oh, my goodness. If you ever hear me describe going into detail as double clicking on something, I don't know.
I've noted it down, and when you say it, I'll switch off.
As long as it's not in an ironic sense. But we're talking about I've forgotten what we were talking about, Peter. I've gone off on it.
We were talking about the some of the characteristics of restaurant delivery, including and last mile.
The ability to plan, the planability. There we go. So there's that food delivery can appear to be random. You've just mentioned, if it's a wet night, does that mean that people are more likely to not want to go to the restaurant? They don't want to cook, so they just order via their friendly app. Or this lack of ability to plan seems to be a characteristic of food delivery. And therefore, does that close the gate or close the door, I should say, to opportunities such as batching of orders and those sorts of things?
No, I think in theory it opens the gate. So I think one of the issues is that it's possible to use algorithms. We're well into this conversation and we haven't mentioned it yet, but it's possible to use algorithms to predict what demand is going to be like. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn out right, but it's a commonly used way of reducing some of the unknowns. I've forgotten what your question was,
The
though.
question was about batching of orders.
Oh, yeah,
Ultimately.
batching of
If we're
orders.
talking
Yeah,
about the
okay.
randomness and the ability to batch.
So, so batching is, in theory, a solution, or one of the solutions to the cost of last mile. Batching basically being, well, we've got 2 customers, we've got 2 orders, we've got 1 restaurant, or we've got 1 restaurant and another one on the way to one of the customers. So you get the rider effectively to deliver 2 or more orders on the same ride. So in theory, that can save costs. The trouble is you're then reliant on having a customer placing 1 order from 2 restaurants, or 2 customers placing an order from 1 restaurant, or 2 customers placing order from 2 restaurants in a line, which makes the rider's journey effective. And the chances of that happening a lot are quite small. It might happen occasionally.
That sort of leads to my next question, which is about things like delivery windows. There's a perception that when you order via an app, I'll order hot food or restaurant food via an app, it's going to be delivered, I'm not going to say instantly, because clearly it's not instantly, but as soon as possible, as opposed to, say, placing your order at 4 p.m. and asking for delivery in a certain time window and just being prepared to wait. Does that really happen, though, Peter? Is there the opportunity for people to order early and maybe even give customers an incentive to order early for delivery later that evening as a way to enable the delivery side of things to be planned better? So it's also optimizing of routes. It's about the batching of orders and all those sorts of things. Is that a possibility, or am I just showing how little I know about food delivery?
No, it's a possibility. It's not followed very much, because one of the unspoken promises of delivery, a restaurant delivery, is you place the order and you get it when you want it, and when you want it is now. So saying, well, you can place the order now and have it in 3 hours' time sort of negates that promise. Having said that, there are companies that do it, and they do it for meal kits. There's a company in the UK called My Supper Hero, for example, that actually you place the order for the meal a couple of days before, and then you get it. You have to finish it off. You pay quite a lot of money for all that privilege. So you end up with a meal, but it's not an instant meal. And I think that's quite interesting, because if you're going out to a restaurant, you usually don't decide on the spur of the moment, I'm going to go out to a restaurant and have a meal within 20 minutes or half an hour. You usually plan it a day to 2 days beforehand, maybe even a week or a month before. So there are 2 distinct markets here. One is for people who want something and want it now and cooked and already. And then there are other people who are prepared to plan, or occasions, I should say, not people, because the same person may want different things, done in different ways at different times. I'm sort of rabbiting on, but I think these are characteristics of the restaurant market that probably don't apply to postal delivery, for example.
Now, and you've just mentioned the meal kit delivery, and that's a particularly interesting topic for the postal world at the moment. The CEO of La Poste appeared before the French Senate the other day and basically said that he sees effectively meal kit delivery as a key part of the Post's future, because letter volumes are continuing to fall. But he's talking about things like what those of us in places like the UK and Australia call meals on wheels. So your meals that are delivered daily to pensioners or to people who are on illness benefits or whatever. It would also include, though, things like what was the name of that company you just mentioned?
My Supper Hero.
My Supper Hero, or My Lunch Hero, or whatever it might be, and then the local situation. So there is an increasing interest in the postal world about that kind of delivery, I think, of food, rather than the restaurant style delivery.
Right. And what you've just described is sort of planned.
Exactly.
You can work it out over a period of a day, 24 hours, get everything sorted. And restaurant delivery doesn't have that benefit. It's instant. The promise is instant.
Instant and chaotic is sort of the perception from some of us who are outside of it.
Well, yeah.
Let's talk about the technology, though, a bit more about the technology. One of the hot topics in the last probably 5 to 10 years in the parcel delivery world has been increasing customer or consumer focus on tracking their delivery. So tracking their orders as it goes through the system. You've placed your order with a major e-commerce retailer whose name begins with A, let's say, and then you're able to track the visibility of your order, when you've placed it, when it's dispatched from the warehouse, when it's going to be delivered. So what kind of tracking do restaurant delivery customers want? Are they equally obsessed?
First of all, it's just one element of the technology that works in the restaurant delivery sector. Secondly, yes, it works. You can see that the order has been received by the restaurant. The restaurant has cooked the order. The rider has been engaged. The rider is setting off to your home, and then you can follow him on his journey or her journey. And then you can see they've gone down the wrong street, and what are they doing? Where are they going? Oh, they're dropping something off on the way. All of that works. Is it essential? No, it's not essential, but it's a desirable thing for some people or for some occasions. So, some people, if they're bored, they may be following the tracking. Or if it's urgent because grandmother is coming around and she doesn't like to be kept waiting. So is it going to be here on time? Different occasions. I wouldn't say it's critical, but it's important.
I suppose if you've ordered the meal, you're waiting for it. There's little chance that you're going to be out in the backyard watering the garden or taking the dog out for a walk when your food is going to be delivered. If you've just ordered your food 20 minutes ago, you're more likely, I suppose.
Yes, you're sitting at your kitchen table drumming your fingers because it's not here. It's 2 minutes late.
Let's talk a little bit about pricing then, because there's a perception, I suppose, that consumers have champagne tastes on a beer budget, but the beer budget is being subsidised by VC money. What's the real story around pricing, Peter?
Well, if we've got about 4 or 5 hours, we can delve into it.
Can you do it in 2.5 minutes?
No, well, yeah, okay. I was going to try. First of all, historically, in the early days of this modern era of restaurant delivery, the price was the same between the restaurant and the, dining in or not. That comes up against the fact that the restaurant delivery companies are still struggling to make a profit. Over the last dozen years, globally, the restaurant delivery companies have racked up losses of about $100 billion US. So it's not a profitable business. The good news is it's on the way to becoming profitable. And one way it's becoming profitable is to charge customers more, either a direct fee for delivery. So that happens in various ways. I won't go into the details now. Another way is to make sure that the the items that they order are expensive. You can do that by nudging purchase decisions, or you can upsell. Oh, well, do you want to have an additional portion of fries with that meal? You can also have a different menu online from the one that you've got in store. So there are various things that you can do to get customers to spend more for delivery than they would for an in-house order. All of that adds up probably to nowadays customers paying more per meal than they would have done if they'd gone into the store.
You said that we could spend hours talking about it, and we very easily could because of the substantial variations between different markets. Even within the USA, the local legislation that's coming into force relating to delivery, the costs relating to delivery, or the rates that are paid to delivery drivers, all impacting on the costs, not to mention you've talked about the things like the different pricing of the menus.
The point I'd really make, though, is that when it comes to restaurant delivery, you've got a whole mix of prices, and you say, well, okay, this meal has cost me $20 to make, and I'm going to sell it for $25. Fine. In that sense, it doesn't really matter which elements contribute to that profit. They all do, because you're not just going to buy the meat, or you're not just going to buy the wine, you're going to buy the rest of the meal as well. So it all adds up. What restaurant delivery does, and what the delivery companies do, is they march into this whole model and say, we want 30% of your meal price as a contribution to our service. And that then disturbs the whole pricing policy, the whole pricing structure. And it means that in some cases, the restaurant is nowhere near making a profit on what they do. They can then argue, well, I've got my fixed costs, so I'm going to incur those whether or not I've got the order and wherever the order comes from. But overall, restaurant delivery contributes less profit to the customer, to the restaurant, than serving in-house. So you then, as a restaurant, you then have to decide whether that incremental profit, even though it's less than you would have got otherwise, is worth it. The UK bakery chain Greggs have said, well, we just make pennies on each delivery, but we don't mind, because we're making lots of deliveries, and lots of pennies and lots of deliveries mount up to a reasonable amount of money. Another restaurant might say, well, yeah, we get 20 orders a day, we make some money out of it, but quite frankly, the chaos that ensues in the kitchen and annoying dine-in customers isn't worth it. So it's just not a simple answer to your question.
Peter, I feel like we've barely even scratched the surface of restaurant delivery.
Well, I don't think we have. And if you're going to say, let's continue this at another time, I'm up for that.
Well, in the meantime, everybody, if you want to hear more from Peter, believe it or not, Peter has his own podcast, his own website, and his own excellent weekly newsletter, which I do recommend. Peter, do you want to just plug your bits and pieces here?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, old style, I have a website, and I have two. One is Peter Backman FS, F for Freddie, S for sugar.com, peterbackmanfs.com. The other one is thedelivery.world. So the first one talks about restaurants and what's going on in the wider food service market, everything from prisons to schools and the supply chain. We've been talking about delivery, so let's focus on the delivery.world. And under that heading, I've got a fortnightly newsletter, also called the delivery.world, which you can access if you want to from my website. I have a podcast called The Delivery Profits. That's PROPHETS. I recently recorded a webinar called Mastering Your Delivery and Takeaway Business, which delves into some of the issues that we've just been talking about. So there's loads of stuff. The delivery.world.
I will stick a link to the delivery.world on the episode page on thepostalhub.com, and you can follow that link and discover all the things that Peter's just mentioned, his podcast, his newsletter, and just the general aura that surrounds Peter Backman. Peter, thank you very much for joining us on the Postal Hub podcast today.
It's been my pleasure. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
Oh, we're all on LinkedIn these days, aren't we? It's where the action's at. It's where all the tremendous cliches like double clicking and you know, I'm going to say it, everybody, reverting and reaching out. It all happens on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Peter. Coming soon on the Postal Hub podcast, Kathleen Cavalier from VUB Mobilise joins us to talk about the attitude behaviour gap and what that means for green delivery. Alan Barry will join us too to talk about some major delivery sector trends, and we'll talk about stamp-free while we're at it. Don't miss any of these great episodes. Subscribe to the podcast in your favourite podcast platform, be it Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or what's the other one? Prime Music. There are some others as well. Subscribe early, subscribe often, as they say. And do also subscribe to my email newsletter. Go to thepostalhub.com and you can sign up for the weekly newsletter so that you get a newsletter, an email, I should say, every time I publish a new episode. You can also sign up for the Daily Delivery Digest or even the Post Office Digest if you're a fellow post office enthusiast. Go to thepostalhub.com, follow the links and sign up for those newsletters. If you want to contact me about anything at all, my email address is ian@thepostalhub.com. I'm Ian Kerr. Thanks for listening in, and I look forward to your company next time on the Postal Hub podcast.